Southwest has never been president before.
But we've had Olusegun Obasanjo.
No, Olusegun Obasanjo is an Igbo man. He came from Anambra State. His father is an Igbo man.
Did you hear that? What do you think about that? The reality is that he may be right. The reality is that I've heard this said for over 20, if not 30 years. The reality is that it's never been conclusively substantiated. And as long as the Nigerian data goes, President Obasanjo is a Yoruba man. And as an Igbo man, let me be the first to say that if President Obasanjo is an Igbo man, I will pump my chest out, because President Obasanjo has contributed a lot to Nigeria. Is he a perfect man? Definitely not. Has he made mistakes? Definitely yes. Has he rubbed some people on the wrong side? Definitely yes. But the shame is that a good number of so-called leaders, which the bigots come back here to complain about me criticizing, President Obasanjo's shoes cannot be shined by those crooks, starting with the drug dealer that many of them support. That's just sound bites for starting out. This episode is going to be explosive. Much as I'm fully behind Peter Obi, I'm not one of those that are against an Atiku candidacy. But I hope Atiku would see the bigger picture and step down for Peter Obi, because I don't think that Atiku has the votes to win this election. And for those who would tell you that Atiku has this spread from 2019 and this spread from 2023, it's all not a conclusive spread. Atiku did as well as he did in the Southeast because he had Peter Obi on the ticket in 2019. And if Peter Obi was not on that ticket, Atiku wouldn't have done as well as he did in 2019. I don't know about South. But Atiku did as well as he did in the last election, because all he got was what he was capable of getting within the machineries of the governors that were PDP governors that worked for him in the state where they were. But we also know that the obedience and the progressives were not aggressive enough about fighting election malpractice, whether it was coming from PDP or APC. We also know that Peter Obi did overwhelmingly very well across Nigeria without the machineries of PDP or APC, simply because Nigerians came out to vote for change. And let's not fool ourselves about it. Peter Obi destroyed the field in 2023. So can you imagine what Peter Obi can do in an election where he has the overwhelming support of Atiku and El-Rufai and Aregbesola, regardless of what baggage they have? If they come behind Peter Obi, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is ancient history. Igbo youth and Igbo progressives who seem to be ready to be brainwashed by the politics of whether the coalition is right or wrong, who needs perfection when the goal is to get rid of a drug dealer? If any of those people who are wondering if the coalition is right or if the coalition is wrong, or if it's perfect or not perfect, if they would prefer another 4 years of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, then I applaud them to continue listening to the propaganda of Bayo Onanuga and his fact twisting cohorts. I am in an Nnamdi Kanu mode, and I am in an Igbo leadership bashing mode, from the traditional rulers to the political rulers to the business rulers to the civic rulers, and even to the grassroots that is taking the nonsense from these leaders. I am in an Nnamdi Kanu mode. It's time to roll with Fred Nwankwo Unleashed. By the way, have you subscribed to our channel? We need your subscription in order to grow. And before, so that you don't forget at the end, we'll really appreciate if you share the video. And don't forget, you need to like and make comments. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us what we're doing right. Hello, everybody. Once again, this is Fred Nwankwo coming to you from our studios in Chicago with another edition of Bold Talk on Allen TV. And as usual, I like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on where you are around the world. Wow. Lately, Nigerians seem to be up in arms against the coalition that led to ADC. And you ask yourself why. You're not asking why because the coalition is perfect. I see faults in the coalition too. Or you ask yourself why. Why are Nigerians chasing shadows and chasing rats when their house is on fire? I must say that I'm very disappointed at the kind of feedback they are giving. These are people who are almost, for the most part, at the level of eating once a day at best. These are people whose small businesses are crumbling because of Bola Ahmed Tinubu's policies. And then I see them talking about this coalition, and the best they can do is find everything wrong with the coalition, instead of looking for the hope the coalition brings. This is a coalition to challenge Bola Ahmed Tinubu. If the coalition is as bad and as useless as many outside APC are saying it is, how come APC is so jittery about the coalition? Think about this. The Boalas of the world and the Bayon Onugas of the world and all the cohorts and bigots that support Bola Ahmed Tinubu have come out vehemently to say that Peter Obi is no good, Atiku is no good, Aregbesola is a traitor, he's no good, El Rufai is no good. Let's assume that all these people are no good. Why are they making such an issue of it? If somebody is no good and he's trash and he's not worth your time, why do you spend so time losing sleep about no good intentions? That's food for thought for the young Nigerians who are distracted, taking their eyes off the prize. Some will tell you that they were promised that Buhari was so bad and Tinubu is the answer. Now they are being promised that Tinubu is so bad, the next guy is going to be the answer. And they were promised Jonathan. So fucking what? Have you found the answer? Are you going to stop looking for the answer because the last answer did not bring the solution? Did you see the antecedents of Bola Ahmed Tinubu before he rigged the election and became the president? Have you looked at the antecedents of Peter Obi? And let me take it one step further. Much as I'm fully behind Peter Obi, I'm not one of those that are against an Atiku candidacy. But I hope Atiku would see the bigger picture and step down for Peter Obi, because I don't think that Atiku has the votes to win this election. And for those who will tell you that Atiku has this spread from 2019 and this spread from 2023, it's all not a conclusive spread. We also know that Peter Obi did overwhelmingly very well across Nigeria without the machineries of PDP or APC, simply because Nigerians came out to vote for change. And let's not fool ourselves about it. Peter Obi destroyed the field in 2023. So can you imagine what Peter Obi can do in an election where he has the overwhelming support of Atiku and El-Rufai and Aregbesola, regardless of what baggage they have? If they come behind Peter Obi, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is ancient history. So when people who are into the status quo argue that Peter Obi doesn't have the votes to win the election, I say to them, be truthful to yourself and go and study what happened in 2023. And if Atiku and El-Rufai and Aregbesola are true to themselves that they don't like what's going on under Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the only candidate they can succeed, they can support and put an end to a drug dealer being president of Nigeria is Peter Obi, and do it early enough, 2 years ahead, 18 months ahead, so that the structures can be put in place across Nigeria to make INEC, if their intentions are dubious, and Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his bigots irrelevant and unable to dare any of their dirty games in 2027. The only prayer Bola Ahmed Tinubu has to stay in Asha Rock in 2027 is that he rigs the election. If he doesn't rig the election, he could pay from here to Kingdom Come, and Nigerians will take his money and chop it, but he'll go home a loser. And now to those who say that Peter Obi is not tested. He was tested in 2019 when he clearly won the election. But Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the courts and the thugs stole the election. The biggest test to show how much Peter Obi won the election is that Peter Obi blew Bola Ahmed Tinubu out of the water in his backyard in Lagos State. To borrow from Peter Obi's own words, go and verify. What I'm trying to say is that we need to keep our eyes on the prize. The goal is not whether this coalition is the perfect coalition. The goal is that if this coalition is not good enough, instead of complaining and saying the coalition is no good, so you are not sure you're going to, no, what you should do is organize yourselves, create a structure to create the ideal coalition that can win with Peter Obi and Datti Ahmed. And why do I keep saying Datti Ahmed? You need a Datti Ahmed if Peter Obi wins, because it means that in 4 years or 8 years, Datti Ahmed will be running for president if they've done a good job, which we think they will do. And if Datti Ahmed runs for president as an incumbent in a popular administration, then he is one of the few Fulanis that, at least by his antecedents, you could say he doesn't have the prejudices and the Sharia agenda and the turning Nigeria into an Islamic State agenda that will set us back when we start a new fight to stop the North from fighting to Islamize Nigeria. We need a president that could set the tone, which is Peter Obi, set the tone, create the structures for building a new Nigeria. And we need to hand over to a northerner, if we're doing the rotational thing, who would continue on the progressive agenda to now take another 4 years or 8 years to stabilize the country and kill the hate of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu bigots from the West. I didn't say the hate of the West. Most of Western Nigeria are progressive Nigerians that are willing to cohabit with other Nigerians in peace and harmony. But the hate-mongering bigots of Tinubu must be minimized, neutralized, and completely made irrelevant in Nigeria. And the hate-mongering Fulanis need to be made irrelevant in Nigeria. And the cabal-pocketed Igbos need to be eliminated. I mean eliminated from influence in matters that concern Igbos. And the same applies to the cabal-pocketed rest of the different tribes of Nigeria. I believe in this coalition, but I believe in a coalition of more progressive Nigerians that are tied less to their past, to be born out of the dissatisfaction we have with this coalition. But I don't believe in being dissatisfied with this coalition to the point where we're ready to tear down the house simply because we disagree with some people who are in there, when we know that the alternative is the drug-dealing Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his cohorts and his bigots. Nigerians, you have to make a choice, and the choice is clear. We can't compromise on the need to elect Peter Obi and Datti Ahmed in the next election. If for no other reason, because they won the last election, and they won the last election fair and square until the election was rigged. And for young Nigerians who are ready to throw in the towel, are you that willing to give up your mandate? Are you that easy to be distracted with hogwash propaganda being fed out of Asherah by Ononuga, the #1 news distorter in Nigeria, who has been distorting the news since 1970 because of his hate and fear of Igbos, who he cannot compete with. I didn't say Yorubas cannot compete with Igbos. I said that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Bayo Ononuga, Dele Alake, and their bigots in Yoruba land, the only way they can compete in Nigeria is to make sure that they minimize Igbos. Because they know that if the field is thrown open, they have no place in Nigeria but to become also rans. Because there are Yorubas, there are a lot of Yoruba journalists that we don't hear their shine because the place is dominated by the Bayon Onuga influenced news distortion journalists from Yoruba land. That the Yorubas who are willing to report Nigeria's news in an objective way are minimized and run out of the market. I'm not sure where David Houdini come from. I've heard references to Badagry, which makes me believe he's a Yoruba man. The Bayon Onugas of Yoruba journalism don't want the David Houdinis of journalism in Nigeria because they don't like objective reporting. They don't want the Rufai Osenis of journalism in Nigeria because he doesn't dance to their music. He's objective. Rufai will call it the way it is. When Igbos screw up, he will call it. When Yoruba screw up, he will call it. That's not the Bayo Ononuga journalism. The Bayo Ononuga journalism calls for Rufai to call it when Igbo screw up and pretend he didn't see it when Yoruba screw up. Every progressive obedient in Nigeria and progressive non-obedient in Nigeria need to keep their eye on the prize. The prize in 2027 is to send Bola Ahmed Tinubu to wherever he can go, but away from any influence in Nigeria. And while we're doing that, develop the structures in security and police and army and whatever it takes to, and the courts, whatever it takes to catch Bola Ahmed Tinubu at his next crime, which he's bound to commit when he leaves Asharok. And the reason he hasn't gone to jail is that the way Nigeria looks right now, the country stinks with crooks that he has plugged every segment of Nigerian life into. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure if you took note at the end of my last episode. I dropped a little hint in there saying, before my next recording, please say a prayer for me. I think some of you said a prayer for me because I'm here to record another episode. I am a public person. My line of work makes me a public person. I pride myself in being a full disclosure member of our community. Full disclosure means that sometimes you're going to bring beautiful news. Every once in a while, you may also have to say some things that may be private to some people. The fact is, which is the reason I bring this to you, is if you cough abnormally, call your doctor. If you walk abnormally, call your doctor. If you breathe abnormally, call your doctor. Even if you have an abnormal appetite, call your doctor. In my case, if you feel pain at unusual places and unusual times, call your doctor. Over the last 2-3 weeks, I was feeling pain off and on, squeezing pain on my chest. After a few days, I decided to call my doctor. When I went to see the doctor, the EKG was more or less for a 67-year-old man, perfect. But because my doctor has my history, he said he's not going to go by the EKG. He ordered other tests, x-rays, blood tests, nothing was picked up, but he insisted he'll do an angiogram, which is pumping dye into the patient and observing everything going on with the arteries and your chest. What he found was that I had a 98% blockage in one of my arteries, and that was what was squeezing my chest and making life difficult. Left unaddressed, only God knows where that could have led. The bottom line was that yesterday I had the angiogram. They found the blockage. They opened it up with a stent. There was not a single cut. They went through my wrist and then did what they had to do. And I'm here to say that I'm thankful to God, and I'm thankful to those of you who heard my subtle message in my last episode and said a prayer for me. And I'm saying a prayer for anybody out there who is feeling something and hasn't called their doctor. I say a prayer, and my prayer will urge God to guide you to call your doctor. Here I am, 24 hours later. I could take this off. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Fred Monko coming to you from our studios in Chicago with another edition of Bull Talk on Allen TV. And until next time, good night and God bless. Ironically, my sign-off song makes so much sense today than it did all these times that I've been playing it. Ekenem Geze. Ihine me baroba.